Welcome to the study session for the City of Abilene, Kansas. This is June 15th, 2020. It's 4 o'clock. Due to COV 1D-19 and social distancing, we're encouraging viewing all meetings virtually on the live stream City of Abilene's YouTube page. The City Commissioners' study session are for the purpose of providing the Commission the opportunity to study items in more detail. And the first item is the open forum. This is an opportunity to bring items to be formally addressed. The mayor may impose a time limit on open forum. Do I have anyone here to speak on open forum? Yes. Next item is open discussion expectations for 2021 budget.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Jane Foltz, City Manager. And Marcus and I have been, and staff have been working through the budget numbers, and you'll see he's in a new location due to his accessibility to the PowerPoint. And just as a reminder, please talk into your mics if you have comments. I know there was some concerns about the public not being able to hear out there in internet land. So just as a reminder. So we worked really hard putting this budget together, and we have some questions for you as we push forward. And so Marcus is going to go through a PowerPoint that we have been working on for the last few weeks. And we want to get your thoughts behind moving forward on this budget. I think we're in a good place. So I'll let him go forward, and you can ask us questions as we proceed.
All right, and this is Marcus Rothschild, Finance Director, City of Abilene. And yeah, like Jane was saying, we've been working through the budget really all year long. And so we've had items come to you throughout the year. And Jane's been sharpening her pencil, especially here lately with COVID-19. And really, we've been going through all the numbers, all the line items over and over again, and just reevaluating where we're at as a whole. We're just working together to try to put together a responsible, productive, and effective budget that still provides a great value to the community, but also takes care of all the needs for the city as well. So the work going in so far, so sometimes the budget season feels really fast, but deep down, I mean, we have already hit the pay plan review, debt service review, utility rate review, the capital improvement plan, and even equipment reserve plan purchases. So now we're just basically taking all of that and putting it into one form. And like Jane was talking about, the last few weeks, we've been building that state form, and we were really close, actually, timing-wise. The assessed valuation we just received in the mail today, and so if timing was just a little bit differently, we might have been able to bring a full draft budget to you. But instead, we thought we'd have a little bit of it says open discussion. It's kind of a little bit of a guided discussion, but we're also open to conversations or questions anytime you guys have those. But now, with a few of these questions, we can bring you, I feel like, a solid draft budget in the next upcoming weeks, and we can really work through that together. So to get started here, one of the first things I wanted to touch on are some of the 2020 budget adjustments that have come due to COVID-19, and just some of the items that are really going to be affecting our budget for the 2021 budget. So first off, sales tax. I know we've all been a little concerned on what we're going to have happen with COVID-19, how that's going to affect the dollars coming in. What we did so far, our sales tax dollars have been maintaining a relatively safe level. We're actually about 2% up from last year at this time. But even our last collection, which we received in May, which is actually tax collected from March, it was down about 6% from last year. So if we see that trend coming in these next couple months, so the June and July are going to be some really big tellers for us, because right there those are going to be the tax collected in April and May, and I feel like those are going to be directly affected by the COVID-19. So we'll get some better ideas. But for budgeting purposes, we wanted to be conservative, so we actually cut 11% off of what our budgeted revenue was for 2020, and which was about $150,000. Last year, when we were going through and preparing for the 2020 budget, we actually budgeted an increase in sales tax with some of the new businesses in town and things that we were anticipating some good numbers from. And now with COVID-19, we're just we want to pull that back a little bit until we have a better handle on where those sales tax dollars are going to come in. So to counteract that, the budget cuts there, that's where, a big part of Jane and all department heads and city staff have been coming together and sharpening those pencils and really just finding places to help protect the budget and to help with some of the lost revenue that we could incur during this time. So between just some personnel, some operations, some positions that aren't filled, we were able to combine, and with all the department heads, they all came together and they all took cuts in their operational budgets as well, which actually came up to about $225,841 in savings for the 2020 budget at this time to help counteract some of that potential sales tax loss. And then another adjustment on more of a positive note, the Department of Commerce job creation grant. And this is one that actually Julie helped identify about a year ago, and it really is going to be a huge factor in the 2021 budget as we get some relief in that the debt service fund. And so that provided $245,404 in grant money that was there meant to help keep the mill levy flat while we were still able to do the upgrades for the 8th Street project. So that has really, in a positive way, helped our 2021 budget numbers.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
On these budget cuts, how do they cut into essential services, or do they?
What they tried to do is make sure all the essential services were taken care of. So anything that could possibly be seen as maybe that item, even office items or anything like that that could be used another year, they're going to get another year of life in it. Now, some of those cuts are going to they don't go away. I mean, these are going to be items, these operational items usually are still going to be needed at some point. So we're just going to have to spread it out over a couple of budget seasons. So they'll slowly still take care of some of those items, just not all right away. And they're just trying to delay some of those until we have a better handle on the sales tax revenue and what's coming in. Because if we get to the end of the year and we don't see that huge drop off in sales tax, I mean, it may be something where, some of those needs, they go ahead and bring them back. But we're just trying to keep a close eye on it for now until we have a better handle on it. So.
Okay, thank you.
Next thing I wanted to touch base on, so there was just a few items today that really, if we can just kind of help get an idea of where the commission stands on it, and just through a discussion, that'll help us put together some final pieces to this budget. But I wanted to discuss the tax lid. The sales tax lid has come out the last couple of years that keeps municipalities from asking for too much of an increase without going to vote. I think it's commendable, and I think it's something that should be said to the public. I mean, we have been very responsible with that number, even the last couple of years. So in 2020, if you look at that number, the limit that we could have taxed without going to a vote was $3,285,774. We actually levied taxes of $2,957,097. So we were under that tax lid by nearly $330,000, which comes to about five and a half mils. So we're not just taking dollars just because they're there. We're trying to be responsible with the budget and take care of the services that the community needs. And so, that's an item I want to bring to your attention because we are still operating at around that level. So what would help for us is to kind of get an idea from the commission on how you feel about that tax lid. I know there can be ideas where, taxing closer to your limit and increasing services could be an option in certain budgets. We can try to maintain where we are today, and so trying to get a feel from where you guys are at and how you're going to feel about that. I think if we can do that up front, we can bring you a better draft budget that and we'll be able to agree on it a little quicker, I think. So I think these were some items I just wanted to get in front of you and just kind of see how you feel about it. The Consumer Price Index is a piece of that tax lid. So they do a 5-year average, which the current 5-year average is 1.8%. And that provided an additional $44,600 to our 2021 number on the state form. And our 2020 number, or 2021 number now is going to be 3.2 million. So it did drop from that limit from last year. So, but we're still well underneath that compared to our last year's numbers. So depending on how we want to present that budget,
Is
we
the
can
mill still
come
around
in there.
54,000?
The assessed valuation, I didn't have much time to really prepare it. It went up slightly. I mean, it's almost flat. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't even have the number here. I didn't even think to have the number with me right now, but it is practically flat. So it's
Yes,
less than a
It's kind of
1%
ballpark.
increase,
Okay.
but it wasn't a drop. So I feel like that's a win.
Right.
So we're happy with that number. So
Marcus, the tax levied with that 2.9, does that include the library, or is that a separate
No, that's
part?
that does not include the library. So when that tax lid is calculated, it actually takes out the library's portion of that. So it does not count against our tax lid.
So they don't have a tax lid for themselves, is that what you're saying?
Not that I am familiar with. No, I do not believe so. I think the tax lid is only on the actual municipality itself. I was trying to think if I don't have that page with me, but I don't believe that there's a tax lid on the actual library portion of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and the next thing that really makes a huge difference on how these numbers come back to you is the fund balance requirements. We've talked to you every year about the fund balance, and we have had a healthy general fund reserve. The fund balance reserve can not be less than 15% or more than 25% based on our current policy. Right now, the 2020 anticipated revenue is $4.4 million, so that would mean that for this 2021 budget, we would need to set a fund balance reserve for the general fund that could be anywhere between $660,000 and $1.1 million. So that's why this is an item that's such a big item to ask your opinions on, because that's a huge number. So when you're looking at near $450,000, that changes a budget significantly. So if you want to be at the 25% compared to if you want to be at the 15%, that obviously is going to change the numbers or the budget significantly there. So that's an item I want to touch base with you on today. The other fund that has the fund balance requirement is the bond and interest fund, and that makes a lot of sense. We want to make sure that we always have enough to cover all of our debt service payments and just have a little bit of a cushion there, which that requirement is 10%. So for the 2021 budget, we'll be putting $67,646 in as a reserve for the bond and interest. So that one is pretty easy. It's a set number, so we don't have to question a lot on that. Going back into the general fund reserve a little closer, I just threw some numbers on here so you guys could take a look at it and see, as it really is a question. Every commissioner may see it differently too, and every person, even the community, might see this differently on what is a reasonable general fund reserve balance that's within our policy requirements. So you can see it's, clear across the board. There's a lot of options. So Jane and I will work within whatever the commission wants to provide us with feedback for that number. And so depending on where we're at, that provides some flexibility on, tax increases and also where that funding goes. One thing to point out, like on the 25%, when we budget right at 25%, almost every year, our expenditures come in fairly significantly under budget. We do have a pretty conservative team that really, like, always works within the budget as closely as possible. And so when we set that at 25%, we usually come in still significantly higher. And so even, I just kind of jotted, so for 2019, since we just got we had an expense budget of $5,132,516, and our actual came in at about $4,706,949. So we were actually under budget by about $425,000. Now there was a lot of significant changes that went in that 2019. There was changes in some large personnel positions. There was some department heads that were missing. There was even city manager time that left from there too. So there were some changes. And sometimes when the city managers leave, if they had plans in place to spend that money in that 2019 budget, we may not have spent that because the new city manager may have wanted to wait until we really had a better handle on what the past policies were before we continued with the current policies that were in place at the time. So that's just another piece that.
For me personally, I like that $1 million mark, because if we hit things like COVID again, it gives us a cushion. I'm not concerned about a full 25%. I know that's not far off, but that's a comfortable number for me personally.
And I think that's helpful. I don't know if anyone else has any feedback on that or thoughts on where you'd prefer to be on any of these.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. It's a good target to shoot for, and like you said, if we're almost always not spending that amount, then that'd keep us in that 25% range to make sure that we're putting the funds to work. And not just being a bank. So, yeah.
No, but we need a reserve.
Right, absolutely.
Have to. And I think, for me personally, that's $1 million
Okay.
for municipality.
Yeah, and until this current pandemic, there was times when, I'm going on 5 years in the position, and that I've looked at it and I thought, what could occur to where that would put us into a situation to where, this balance, and then all of a sudden a pandemic hits, and I thought, there it is. That's the thing that I hadn't quite thought of, but it was COVID-19, and so so it can happen. So it is. You do want to be safe and make sure that we have the funding in place.
Well, and that helps us meet our requirements too. I mean, it's under the 25, but over the 15. But $1 million's just a nice, comfortable number for municipality.
That sounds good.
From past budget years, I think that's where we need to be.
And then, actually, we were going to go ahead and discuss the alcohol and drug fund. Just quickly, I did receive a call from Patty O'Malley, and she was requesting funding. And so this is an item, we've brought it up multiple times, but the current plan was to basically, we spent out the money in 2019 and got it into the hands of the people that could use it. So what we carried over was $7,454. The thought moving forward would be then that we would only spend out in the upcoming year what we actually brought in the previous year. So at this time for 2020, there would really only be $7,454 available, even if there happens to be more in that fund balance. As a staff, Jane and I were talking, and we just think it would be a lot easier to manage that if we have a set number. So each year we come in, we know exactly what we brought in the year before, and we're able to tell the organizations that could use those funds, this is how much we brought in, and this is what's available for you to request. And the thought would be then that we would basically during the budget process, we would go ahead and provide full budget authority so the funds are available. And then coming up as soon as the year ends, we know exactly how much we brought in. So come early in the year, possibly, February, March timeframe, something to that effect, we would send out that request to the organizations and let them come in all at one time so you can review all of the applications at the same time, and then make a decision on, how that funding would be brought out. That was kind of my thoughts on it, but I wanted to make sure that you're on board with that and that it would work. Another thing I talked to Patty about, she actually mentioned that some of the other cities had, she said, actually keep it simple, stupid. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's, I really should. Like, we should make this easier if we can. And so I like that. And she said, just get one-page applications that we can fill out. And so I did kind of look around at some other cities and what they had. And so you can see that application sitting on your desk. And we can add to it if you see anything that's missing or if you have any suggestions. But I thought this was a quick, clean way. We can send that out. If anyone does ever call requesting funds, we can send this, we can put in the number that, the exact number at the top for what's available for distribution that year. And even if they call after the distribution, they'll know that for the the next year, they need to be in at this time, and that potentially that next year will be bringing in likely between $14,000 and $15,000 for that upcoming year. So
I like that plan. I like that a lot, instead of everybody coming in during budget when we're worried about bigger things and little bit of
Yeah.
alcohol money. So this year's budget, you're saying 3,000 to Cedar House and 15 SNAP. We always do 1,500 SNAP.
And this number at the top there, that 2,954, that is technically what is remaining at this
Yeah, I
time, because we gave 3,000 and then the 1,500, so $4,500 out already, just like you said.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Good deal.
Marcus, the SNAP, since they didn't use it, because there was no prom, so,
We haven't reached out to SNAP to ask how that funding would work. And I would want to check, and we could report back to you, because it's not impossible that they didn't put that funding to some sort of use still. I'm not sure if the school offered a different program, if they did anything with prom at all, even remotely, or I'm not familiar with that. So I will need to reach out to SNAP and ask if they are going, or possibly that funding, if that'll just go towards next year's already. So,
You mean give them 3,000 next year?
well, I mean, if potentially for next year, maybe if they didn't use any funding this year, that this 1,500 would just go towards their next
Carry
year's
over.
prom. So there's some questions I do need to reach out to SNAP and ask, so.
So this is Jane Foltz, City Manager. Also, we did have the discussion about drug court, some funding from here with drug court, but due to some things that have happened, COVID, it doesn't look like that's going to go forward this year. So we were kind of holding back some funds in case we wanted to be a part of that, but don't see that happening right now. Not to say that it's out in the future, but that would be another opportunity for some funding to go within our community.
Okay. Let me understand, we're looking at doing this all early in the year. People can't come in during the year wanting more money. They have to wait till the following year if they haven't got their application in, whatever date we set.
We would really like to see this prior to the budget
Yeah,
being set. And that's why looking for an opportunity for people to say, I would like to have some of that drug and alcohol fund. I think, it's by statute why we receive that and who it can go to. And so the Cedar Houses, the the drug court, Central Kansas Foundation, SNAP. Those are all qualified entities that could use these fundings. And so we would like them to do this early on. So there's a process, and it's pretty simple. And we know how much money we got in 2020 for 2021 distribution. And then you don't have to worry about it. You will get to see these, and they have to meet the guidelines of that funding. We just can't be handing out money, but this is a pretty simple process. So again, making things simple.
I like that.
I would like to see a cutoff date on the application, like June 1st, current year. And then on the bottom, don't you guys have a P.O. box, not a city address?
Oh, yeah, I can add that, or I
Yeah.
can put the P.O. box
I
on.
think
I
we'd
think-
want her cut off earlier than that, perhaps, but I don't
Is
know.
June 1st reasonable, or does it
I-
need to
I-
be earlier?
I think if you did it in May, it would be okay,
Okay,
because
whatever.
prom goes in April. Patty, I think, was here in February, maybe. Central Kansas Foundation had called us earlier in the year, but we were like, we're on hold right now because of COVID and other things. But yeah, I think early is fine. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with June 1st, May 1st,
Something to show that
Yeah, have
there's
Yeah.
a cutoff.
a deadline.
Yeah,
Okay,
a
we'll
deadline.
work on that. Marcus and I can sit down and kind of come up with what's happened in the past.
yeah.
Okay.
So basically, so these were so it's gonna be a pretty simple conversation today, because now we're just gonna kind of go back over, because you're already answering most of these questions as I go, to help us bring this budget to you. But, so the first one was, how do we manage the alcohol and drug funds? Kind of just discuss that. So if you're okay with that process, we'll probably move forward with that, and then I'll work on putting a cutoff date on there, and getting the P.O. box on there as well, and we can move forward with that plan, and that'll help us set for the 2021 budget.
Marcus, I think
Station.
we should do this by resolution, because we found out that if we have a resolution, we can track when this happens. So to adopt this application process, we could have that ready for you on Monday, or if you would.
Yeah, consent agenda, because it's.
Would you like that? Okay. So we could do a resolution on this,
Sounds good.
and then we can track it. And you want that consent agenda, Mayor?
Good.
Yes.
Very good.
I think that would work.
Okay.
And then the second question that we were looking at was the acceptable level for the general fund reserve. I heard a couple say $1 million. So if we were to bring that initial draft with some around
Commissioner
that-
Schaefer here. I have a question about that, Marcus.
Uh-huh.
So if we say $1 million in the general fund reserve, and things do continue poorly through the rest of the year, and we need, say, $400,000, and we can't get it because it's in the general fund reserve.
Well, and actually with the way the state form works, so they have the general fund reserve, there is an actual line on the state form that lists that. So it actually lists, and it'll be, and I wish I had a state budget form that I could pop up in front of you, but we'll bring that on the next one. It actually provides the commission with budget authority to use that reserve. So you, in the case of things that come up, you still will have the authority to use it. It's just, it's not penciled into our daily line items to where we would be planning to spend it. But if the commission votes on an item or something comes up within that year, you do have the authority to spend those dollars as you would, vote or would be seen needed. So
By resolution.
that would not necessarily have to be by
No.
resolution. It could just be on a case-by-case basis. But that money is budgeted to be available.
Okay.
That's why the $1 million reserve, then we have to draw from if we have to.
This is Jane Foltz, city manager. So that fund, general fund, that level that we have been sitting on these past number of years. I bet it's been 10 years now, probably, somewhere in there. So that is where, when we had the property at the lumber yard come available, that's where we used those funds. You all had budget authority to do that, but you also made a motion to purchase that property. And those are the funds that were used. But you still stayed within your budget authority.
In that particular time, we happened to be over our limit, what we set for ourselves. And,
Right,
and that's the whole
right.
purpose, so if things like that come up,
Mm-hmm.
we can handle it, whether it be another pandemic or an opportunity.
Right. We just want to know what you all are comfortable with, so that we can work this budget to the best of our ability. You still have budget authority. You still have you have the last say on how these funds are spent. You are in control. We just need it to help us through this budgeting process to set forth the best budget we can for you all.
Then really the last one is just kind of get an idea then on, so what's our true expectation on the mill levy? And so I just put out really all the options. It's not all the options because there's, well, somewhere in the middle, I guess, does cover a lot of that. But so option A, we keep the budget flat to 2020, keep the mill levy flat, try not to increase the mills. Option B, we increase just enough to cover the CPI adjustment, so the 44,600, which would be less than a mill to increase. Or you have the authority to increase to the full authority, which would be an additional $245,000. And so that would be nearly a 5 mil increase. Or you can go anywhere in the middle. That is an option. Or if you see it necessary, you can always guide us towards cutting the property tax, and we can try to do everything we can to try to see how that's possible. So those are all the options, and we just kind of want to know as a group where you stand, and then hopefully that way our first draft will have a better chance of.
But this is
Having
Commissioner
agreement.
Marshall, and this isn't my first budget with the city, as you know. And every year, we try and keep it just as flat as possible or very minimal increase, and then taxes go up around us. I do not want to say, stay flat and then hurt our basic services. We have to maintain a level of services for the public. I don't want to go crazy and raise taxes just to be raising taxes. I don't think we can cut this year, but I'm not saying I necessarily want to stay flat either. I want to maintain a comfortable level of services.
This is Chris Osterman, Mayor. I don't think people realize commercial property, is it double property taxes? Surcharge from regular personal? And you have
How
all,
much, Brenda?
it's 25%.
I know I paid that.
It's Commissioner Ryan. The personal is 11.5%, and then the commercial is assessed at 25%.
Which is almost double than personal.
Close.
And you have businesses that are just struggling, and my concern is this property tax, and you have all these businesses that have been shut down they have no way to pay, well, they have a way to pay their property tax, but I don't know what can be done, but I think if you want people to stay in commercial business, sometimes you're gonna have to think about outside the box on number E, and I don't know what to do, but I think there needs to be a discussion about it.
Well, I'd like to ask this question. When was the last time anything the city did with their budget to raise property taxes? I know the county and school board have.
And I don't have the slide in front of me. We did kind of touch on that. We've gone up slightly, but not much.
Not
There's
very
been
much.
times that I know we've even
Half
gone
of
up just
1%
the
one year,
increase
I think.
to cover the library. and
Was
there's-
that due to, Commissioner Schaefer, was that us or was that the library?
That year, our increase was the exact amount as the library.
It was the library.
And so we've worked hard to try to stay relatively flat in
Yeah,
the
Yeah,
past.
Commissioner Schaefer's been here as long as I have, and we've kept it.
I don't recall
I
that
think the first year
first
that
year.
we were on, it was was 0.25%
Yes.
that we raised. After that, nothing.
This is Jane Foltz, City Manager, and I have invited the library to come to the commission as a courtesy to present their budget, and that will be on July the 6th. And I don't know if you want to share anything else, Mayor?
I was at the meeting last week, and they never made a concrete decision. We're meeting again next week. Pretty much the generality is that in front of them, they need to reduce by 10%. Just because they're, right now, what was it, 183,000 was their budget for payroll, for everything. And that was in 2016. In 2021, it's jumped 42%. So I pretty much explained that everybody in our city facilities, is trying to reduce by 10%. So they're gonna have to find a way to help the public. The services still need to be done, but we all need to be on the same page. We can't, one, jump everything, and the other ones are trying to do their best to keep it low. So there will be a meeting, I think it's a week next Tuesday. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Jane Foltz, City Manager. So as we've been working through this budget process and COVID hit, we made reductions right away in 2020, which will then help us in 2021. So I think that's why you see, and when you are presented with our first draft budget, you will see some it's relatively flat at this point. That's why we need some of these decisions by you, and they're not easy decisions to be made to help Marcus and I work those numbers that we've all been talking about along the way. Personnel, we're talking about our CIP, we're talking about facilities reserve fund, we're talking about some things that are very important for this city that we haven't looked at before. And so as we work through these numbers, we are trying to get the best opportunity for this city to continue with essential services and not reduce services, get the job done, but not increase our budget in order to harm our taxpayers. And that's, there's a lot that goes into this. It's not just about 2021. It's about right now. What can we do now? And I think you all know that we did not buy a police car this year. That was that was something we did now. We didn't fill some positions. We had some positions that retired, and they will not be filled at that capacity, causing a cost savings. So, there's a lot of things that we've been working on in 2020 in order to help 2021 going forward. So I wanted to share that, and I do appreciate everything that Marcus has been working through, and the staff, and this is all of us coming together for the good of the whole. So moving forward, this will give us some insight, and I would like to hear from the other commissioners so that we know coming here possibly Monday with a draft budget that we can bring you something that you really know has been well thought out. So.
This is Commissioner Marshall, I do have a question for you, Jane. Are there positions that, if they become vacant for some reason, that we leave them vacant by attrition, that we wouldn't have to fill that position?
We have been doing that, yes.
I thought so. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Ryan. I do agree that I think with the budget issues that we're facing right now, we probably are not in a position to cut property taxes currently. I do want to, my personal opinion, I want to keep them as flat as possible because, we think our budgets are hurting right now. You look at the small businesses that have been shut down or are facing low to no traffic, and property taxes are a very big burden on those small businesses. As Mayor Oshman talked about, those commercial buildings, if they own their buildings, are assessed at 25%.
I agree 100%,
Yes.
but I don't want to lose essential services to keep it flat.
Correct.
That's all I'm saying.
Right. And I think we're going to be able to do that.
I think so too.
I think there's enough other budgetary restrictions that we can put on to make sure we are keeping the essential services funded. But yeah, I'd like to keep it as flat as possible. Just, I don't want to pass that burden on to the small business owners that are struggling to even stay afloat right now.
Commissioner Schaefer, so I kind of got through some of that early information that you're looking to fund our budget on no increase, is that correct?
Jane and I have been working, that's been our initial plan, was to try to keep this as flat as possible. And so getting this information in front of you is really what I think the finishing piece for us to be able to put that together and try it. We really are trying, because we know the position of the community right now, just like what Brandon was saying and Chris. Jane and I have had that conversation a lot of times. A lot of people were affected by COVID-19. And so we're trying, as we work through this budget every day, to try to keep it as flat as possible. And so that's been our plan, and we've been aiming for it, and we're just trying to make sure that if we can put all of this information together, I think we're going to be really close to being able to bring you guys something like that. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, if we keep $1 million reserve, that's under our 25%, do we get to suck up that 100,000 to use in our budget and help maintain it flat or not?
That was a piece of this, because hearing that when you look at that, that's $100,000 now that helps go towards the budget without increasing property tax.
That's
So
what I want that clarified.
that was one that I checked on here. Okay,
That's really
helpful.
important.
So yeah, those are some of the items that we're picking up today that we're hoping
Can go quite a ways.
when we run those numbers now and we plug those in, we're hoping, we're able to kind of pull that together. And we did get a slight increase. I mean, I think it's not going to see much, but from the assessed valuation, but, usually you'll maybe pick up 20 or 30,000 extra dollars there. I haven't been able to plug it in yet because we haven't had it long enough, but, all of these things just help us to be able to help keep it flat, so.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Witt. I'm of the same mind of keeping it as flat as possible, and if to maintain those essential services, if there is some sort of increase that's needed, just a justification to us, I think would be great. And then another thing, thanks for putting in that the space that we have in the mill levy. That's an interesting piece of information for me to see, just as we have these two infrastructure projects coming up in mind of the southeast drainage and of 14th Street. Just looking forward to 22 and 23 as we getting closer to paying off also some of our existing debt. That keeps me hopeful to where if our local economy sees a nice rebound in those coming years, to where there could be some funds to help with those projects that are coming up. So, yeah, overall it looks great.
And I wake up my computer over here. All right, I guess that was actually our last slide there. So unless there's any additional questions or anything else that you had in mind budget-wise before our next step, I think, is to bring you a draft budget, and we can really dive into it and take a look and see where we're at. So.
Is there any questions for Marcus? Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next item is community center flooring replacement.
You skipped one.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, sorry, I apologize. I didn't have my glasses on. Update from the police department on policing restraints and tactics.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm your interim chief of police, Jason Wilkins. I was told that with what's going on in our country, there may be some questions about the police department's use of force policy and some of the equipment that we use to ensure the transparency and that the process of those policies are being followed. So I just wanted to hit a few of the points that I know is out there in the media and departments are reviewing across the country.
Excuse me, is his mic on?
It is.
It is?
It
Okay.
is.
I just wanted to make
Speak up.
sure.
All right. I don't get told often that people can't hear me, so. So I'll hit a few of those points, and hopefully offer you guys some reassurance. So the Abilene Police Department, our officers are bound by what I consider to be a pretty robust use of force policy. Our current policy was revamped in 2012, and is revisited as we add equipment into our organization. That policy right now prohibits the use of vascular neck restraints, otherwise what is commonly referred to as a chokehold. In addition from that, to avoid the possibility of positional asphyxiation, the policy dictates that once an individual is under control or in handcuffs, if they are still face down, they're to be moved onto their side or seated in an upright position until they're able to be placed into a patrol car and transported to a detention facility. The use of force policy does contain a use of force continuum, which outlines 5 levels of force from compliant to lethal that lays out options that each officer has at each level. Anytime an officer uses force that is lethal, less lethal force, or force that requires medical attention, they fill out what is called a response to resistance form. That form is then, once completed by the officer, sent up the chain of command and reviewed individually by the command staff. All of our officers that are in the field are issued individually body cameras. I mean, many of you probably saw them. It's controlled by what's called the controller and a battery pack on their belt. Some keep it up here in a pocket. It's really personal preference, but that is activated manually by the officer. The policy for those body cameras specifically says that during any law enforcement contact or call for service, it is to be activated. Now, there are times where obviously things happen rapidly and the officer may be late doing that. Our body cameras do offer a buffering period, so it goes back 30 seconds from the time it's activated, so you're able to capture that as well. In addition to body cameras, each of our patrol vehicles are outfitted with in-car cameras. Those are activated when the emergency equipment come on, when the patrol vehicle reaches the speed of 84 miles an hour, or it can be manually activated by the officer. That captures what's going on in front of the car as well as what's going on in the car. It also offers a setting that is called record after the fact, to where if something is happening that it was not recording at the time, we can go back and capture a time period that we're looking for. Certainly across the country, with what is going on, I think police reform is coming. What that's going to look like, I don't know, but I want to reassure you, the Abilene Police Department is dedicated to following whatever those recommendations may be. With that, I would take any questions you guys might have.
Commissioner Marshall, I have a question. Do we use no-knock at all?
So the no-knock warrants, at least in the state of Kansas, have to be specifically requested on a warrant and signed by, approved by the judge that signs the warrant. In my 15 years with the department, I don't recall a time where the Abilene Police Department, ever used a no-knock search warrant. Our preference, we knock and announce. My expectation is, not only do I want to know the people inside that house to know who we are, I want the whole neighborhood to know who we are.
Right.
When we're executing a search warrant. So does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yes, it does.
Commissioner Schaefer, one of the issues in the news is that the body cams were not turned on. And what happens if they don't turn it on? Are there policy procedures?
Yes, they would be subject to a policy violation. I don't want to put the cart in front of the horse. I know, I think for the 2020 CIP, we have identified, so our current body cameras we've had since 2015. We were actually kind of ahead of the curve for a lot of agencies, certainly in our area, that went to body cameras. So we have re-upped with the company called Axon twice now. So we're going into year 6, and it's a piece of technology, understand. They break, technology gets updated, and these have kind of fallen behind. So we're at a place where we need to update our body cameras. So we've identified the company that does, WatchGuard, that does our in-car camera system, now offers a body camera that integrates into that car system, which if the lights come on the car, the body camera kicks on as well. So hopefully that can cut down in some of those situations, working with just, instead of 2 different platforms, working on one same platform. And like I say, I expect that we'll be bringing that in front of you probably in the coming months. So.
This is Commissioner Ryan. I have a question. When that is upgraded and gets, I guess, assimilated into that new system, will that offer the ability to go back to a certain time frame, just like it does with the car vehicle cameras, or?
That is my hope. And we're still in talks with the WatchGuard rep. And it's possible that since we had those discussions earlier in the year, there may be some technology upgrades on their end that perhaps that is an option. But if it is, that would just be another advantage
Well,
to
society
their
may
company.
dictate that some advances come that we weren't expecting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, thank you.
anything else?
This is Commissioner Witt. One of my questions is, and related to the situations that have played out in this country, is related to the discipline process. If there is ever an issue with a law enforcement officer, it seemed like these scenarios where the worst happened was because of a long time frame where misbehavior was not addressed. And so I guess my question is, what's some of the process in our police department of how, if any misbehavior happens, what's the process of how that gets
Sure.
addressed?
And it would be a case-by-case issue. And I judge it typically on severity and frequency of it. And I think a lot of the things you're seeing across the country from some of the larger departments where, you have complaint after complaint after complaint, understand a lot of those officers are probably protected by unions, which we do not have here. Police unions across the country are a very powerful organization. And I think that's probably the case in a lot of those that you hear about.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Anything else? So, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, community center flooring replacements.
So I'm going to report for Kelly, as she has opened the pool today. They were very busy, and she's got a rec board meeting at 5:30. So this is an item that actually started when I was still working as the Parks and Recreation Director. And she has a memo in the packet that talks about the need for the tile and in both the lobby and in the multipurpose room needs to be replaced. And the architects who actually designed the building were the ones who got us in touch with Ritter Tile. They're the only company that will come in and actually take that off, put in a vapor barrier, and then put a new floor down. And the cost of that is $35,402. And as you know, we have a community center fund that was proceeds from the sales tax that went beyond what the building costs, and we've been using that to make upgrades to the community center. And so there is sufficient funds to do this. And since we are not having a fair this year, they thought they could do this work late July, early August. And so she's asking for approval of this, and it's your pleasure.
You said we still have quite a bit of money in that fund?
I think, Marcus, I'm
Just-
trying to remember.
Yeah, I just pulled up the quarterly treasurer's report. So as of March 31st, there was 112,000. I don't believe that anything's come out of that since.
I don't think so.
If not, it wasn't anything.
We
significant.
might have had some electrical updates with the bollards,
Okay, so
but yeah, there's plenty of funds in that left there.
This is Marshall, I have no problems with it.
Marcus, just to get it clear, that fund was split between Parks and Rec, was not?
No, this is the,
Swimming pool for
no,
that?
that's the library pool fund. That's a different fund.
Okay.
This
that's
is
fine.
community center alone
Community center alone,
Mhm.
okay. I just wanted to clarify.
for those
Thank you.
tax proceeds that were gathered for, or we received for the building of that facility.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? I think that's.
Would you like that on the consent
consent
agenda?
Yes.
Would that be, okay,
Yes, thank you.
very good.
Next item, CDBG-CB grant agreement.
Julie, you want to talk about that? I've got Julie here, and she has flown this from the beginning.
All right, great. This is Julie Roller Weeks, Abilene Convention and Visitors Bureau Director. We just have a grant agreement with the Kansas Department of Commerce to be able to move forward with our $130,000 grant, which will help small businesses. I'm still working with Commerce and North Central Regional Planning Commission on what that application looks like. There's been a lot of questions on duplication of funding and how that all looks. If somebody receives PPP, can they still apply for this? And there's still some uncertainty on those questions, so we're being just cautious on rolling that out so we don't create any confusion with the businesses or false hopes or just anything like that. But I'm hoping to get some more answers to that this week, and I'd love to get an application out sometime next week, and then we'll just move forward with setting that deadline and then looking at everything and trying to see how we can help as many people as possible. At the end of the day, I mean, $132,000 to a CVB budget's a lot, or to Julie Roller personally, but in the whole scheme of our community, it's not a lot of money. So these businesses are not going to be able to get $30,000, but how we can look at them and try to provide those small injections of revenue just to keep them afloat will be really good. So we're working through that process, and this grant agreement is just one step in that process.
Commissioner Marshall, I do have a question. I was reading through this, the reporting requirements, who tends to that?
I will handle all of those.
That's what I was afraid
What you
of.
receive in free money, you pay for in time and paperwork.
Exactly.
And so this is going to be quite a job.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, tourism has changed a lot right now, so I will have some extra time to work on
So
this.
these businesses will report to you as
Yes,
funds are
absolutely. Yes, we'll be
expensed.
required to maintain all kinds of records on this. And so we want the reward to be worth the amount of work that goes into it. I know there's some other programs out there that ask for a lot of information, and the grant of dollars are really small, and you think, well, that's not even worth applying for. So we're hoping that our dollar amount is worth the paperwork that a business can receive, and really just providing some assistance to help people through this time. As Commissioner Ryan and Mayor Osterman have indicated, this is a tough time for businesses. Thankfully, many have been really innovative in changing their business approaches, whether they're selling online or curbside. But as you know, Tim Horan indicated earlier, having closure of some of our tourism attractions definitely affects our bottom line. And so if we can help out just a little bit, this was free money that was out there. It was first come, first serve, and I'm really proud that Abilene's on that list.
Well, I'm proud of you for doing it, and I hate to see that burden put on you for the reporting, but I feel like it will be done correctly.
Oh, definitely. And what's good for Abilene and our economy is also good
It's
for
good
tourism.
for
I mean, we're all
Abilene.
related.
Right.
Some people don't think tourism is economic development, but I think it absolutely is.
Yes, it is.
So if we can provide revenue to keep our businesses here, you know, best historic small town to visit isn't much if there are no businesses to spend your money at when you come here. So this all connects that way, and I'm just excited to get the money out.
So Julie, the
Yes.
application process goes to the Department of Commerce?
It'll all go through the city of Abilene once we have our application ready.
And so who will be making the decision?
That's a great question. We haven't even got there
I
yet.
know,
Um,
but
We'll have a
already-
team.
People are already asking.
No, we will have a team together, and there will be review criteria, but it's to look at all of them at once, to see how we can help as many as possible at one time. Not first come, first serve, so there's, you know, panic and trying to get those in, and then awarding too much money out and not having enough money for the last application, really to be thoughtful about it and how we can help people.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, do I have any further questions? Comments?
Commissioner Schaefer, I just have some questions, general questions.
Okay.
I see some activity out south of Love's. Is there something going on out there? I saw some heavy equipment out there.
So did I. This is Jane Foltz, city manager, and we have not heard anything as a city. No one has knocked on the door to tell us anything. I think they had a lot of vegetation grow back, and we have not heard a thing.
Yeah, how about the CBD plant or whatever it's called? We talked to, I can't remember his
Oh.
name.
Jeff Wilkins?
Yes,
I think they're working on a plan,
okay.
and we haven't heard back from Jeff.
And Holiday Inn Express?
They're still planning on a hotel. COVID has slowed that process, and so they're back to the drawing table with their financing.
Okay, thanks.
Very good.
With that said, this is the close of the study session.
I do have a few
Oh,
updates.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Thank you. This is Jane Foltz, City Manager, and just a few announcements. Ron Ryan, our Assistant Fire Chief, are having an open house retirement party for him this Friday at the Fire Department from 2 to 4. We want to thank him for his years of service with the City of Abilene, and the mayor will be giving some remarks about 2:15. So please stop by. It's a come and go. We're not going to linger longer. We will have sanitizer there. We will still practice social distancing, and we'll be having some cake and punch to thank him. We also are planning a retirement open house for Public Works employees, Kevin Stroda and Tim Davis, on, I believe it's June 30th. Tim retired in February 2020, but in the process, we did not get a retirement party for him scheduled, so he and Kevin will be honored at that retirement party on June 30th with a time and place to be determined. And again, looking at social distancing and making sure everyone's safe. The 8th Street project is going well. As of now, the project is on schedule, so you've probably seen a delay. We got water, sewer, and storm drain all are installed, and I think in the next week or two you will see some earth moving. They'll start working on the actual road, and then the demolition of 404 Cottage is complete. That was one that you guys have been working on for quite some time, and the demo at the airport is now complete, and we are waiting for bids to return in the next, I think, in 2 weeks. For that building to be re-erected. And goodness, we don't know what those bids are going to come in at. We will get insurance proceeds for that. Hopefully they will cover most of that building. And then the search for a new police chief has begun. We will be doing a national, regional, state, and local advertising for this position. So that is my update.
Well, thank you. Okay, that ends the meeting.